Hello, everybody. This is Off Leash with Erik Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. An incredible attack by Israel in Lebanon against Hezbollah leaders. Just one for the ages, where throughout the country, within a brief span of 30 minutes, pagers on the hips of terrorists exploded everywhere. The next day, walkie-talkies. What's next? Erik, this is one that we need to break down because you're the best guy to give us insights on how in the heck did the IDF, did Israeli intelligence pull off such a dramatic attack?
Look, for as much of a screw up as it was the October 7 attacks that Hamas was able to pull one over on them, this is a spectacular success. So you have to give credit where credit is due. I'm jealous that the CIA is incapable of this kind of innovation and audacity to pull off this level of damage to your mortal enemies. So over time, the security services convinced the Iranians that their comms, that their phones were compromised, and so they were shifting to some kind of secure pager. But the Israeli security services had somehow gotten into the supply chain and produced a pager and sold it to them that had not been produced by the actual manufacturer in over 10 years. And apparently they inserted some kind of explosive, probably a small piece of RDX or Petin. It's what you make blasting caps or detonation cord out of, into the actual battery. So when they sent an electric pulse through the pager, like you're sending a page, and in this case, the number that popped up was from the supreme leader. So everyone would be looking at it, and sure enough, it clacked off. It blew up, high order. And I just got to read the statistics of their success here. Hezbollah reports 879 deaths of about 2,800 pagers that blew up. 120 to 130 Iranians, not Hezbollah, Iranians. 70 plus Yemenis, of which, and of the 879, 291 were senior officials. 500 plus were blinded. The vast majority of them, 491, completely blind. 600 plus were seriously wounded, of which 84 were senior citizens. So there was some collateral. But of the total injured, 1,700 were damaged in their reproductive organs, of which 900 were irreversibly damaged. You know what that means? Ouch. Less than 50 were collateral damage, meaning civilians that were killed. Terribly sad that civilians were killed, but those were probably family members of the Hezbollah members choosing that family business to be terrorists attacking the IDF. So it's an enormous success to have that level of strike through the entire infrastructure. And as you opened with, day one was pagers. Day two, while they're at the funerals, burying a lot of these guys, the ICOM walkie-talkie type radios blew up. And then the third day or fourth day, the remaining leadership ended up meeting in a couple of locations. One of them, a underground parking garage. And I saw the video of a 2,000-pound guided bomb penetrating the entire structure, blowing up and killing them all. Now that one was particularly satisfying for me because that was the guy, one of the two, that planned and executed the Marine barracks bombing of 1983, killing 243 U.S. Marines. Again, Reagan sent peacekeepers to Lebanon trying to make peace, and that was the Lebanese, Hezbollah, Iranian answer to America trying to make peace. They blew up 243 of our Marines. So you know what? Fuck you right back. Glad that justice was finally served.
Well, amen to that. Let's take a look at this, though, Erik. The precision that this required is just breathtaking. They had to get, first of all, Hezbollah turned to pagers because of concerns over cell phones. The Israelis had to penetrate the supply chain to get the pagers in their possession to install the explosives as well as the walkie-talkies. And then they've outsmarted them at every turn because they got them off the cell phones to pagers, pagers to walkie-talkies. Then they had to meet in person, and yet the Israelis were playing three-dimensional chess, anticipating every one of their next moves. So they knew they would have to meet in person to target that strike. I mean, it's breathtaking precision that this required.
And again, good on them. Good on the junior man or woman that brought up, hey, I have an idea. Let's hack their pagers and let's put explosives in them so we have a simultaneous strike against all of our enemies. Amazing, and it speaks well to a culture of that organization that will at least embrace risk and be a wildcatter at heart, like an oil driller that sometimes drills and hits oil, sometimes they miss. But when you have a very risk averse culture of the CIA and the U.S. government, you would never ever seriously consider any idea this unusual. And again, how many of these have they tried that they missed? Doesn't matter. This one was an enormous success, and good on them.
Well, and look, the vaunted Israeli IDF and intelligence services, probably some of the best, as you would tell us, some of the best in the world, clearly had their credibility destroyed after October 7th. And there was this before October 7th last September, the Israeli military had actually confidently characterized Gaza as being in a state of stable instability. And intelligence assessments concluded that Hamas had shifted its focus to stoking violence in the West Bank and wanted to limit the risk of direct Israeli retaliation. Clearly, they got that completely wrong. They were caught blindsided coming from Hamas in Gaza, and had their attention looking north and looking at the West Bank within their own territory. And if you take a look at this as well, Erik, I want you to comment on that. And then I want you to comment on the fact, this contrast between these bloodthirsty terrorists and how they targeted civilians on October 7th. And yet here is the IDF going after warriors, going after, basically the guys in the military, the terrorists, the guys who are fighting the war, not the civilians.
Well, they went after the entire the org chart. I mean, if you think about it, everyone in the Hezbollah leadership org chart is going to have a pager, and they clacked the pager off at the same time, and they literally blew the balls off of almost 900 of their enemy. So as great as the July 1976 Entebbe raid was in terms of audacity and great commando work, this vastly surpasses that in being able to do a targeted strike. I think it also speaks to supply chain worries that we should be concerned with, because how many people in America are walking around with a smartphone made in China? China doesn't have to hack our supply chain. In many cases, they own it. They provide everything. And so it speaks to probably having to have a lot better inspection of what we have coming from China in terms of appliances, pharmaceuticals, electronics, etc. And also why I'm particularly proud of an unplugged phone, which is not made in China, with a supply chain not coming from China, with an operating system that we control, with a chipset that we flash the memory on. So it speaks to the value of an unplugged phone versus buying one off the rack that is made in China with a supply chain that you really can't depend on.
Two quick exit topics on this, Erik. Number one is you commented about the deficiencies in with the U.S. military and the CIA. Will they learn from this? Will they develop some new strategies of their own, learning from the IDF and Israeli intelligence?
Look, having someone be able to cite the success of what the Israelis did might be heard in a few more meetings, but it will die in large committees of bureaucrats that will rather sit on their hands than actually do their jobs and take the fight to the enemy. So again, elections have consequences, and perhaps there's room for leadership changes and a cleanup that is necessary across the United States U.S. national security apparatus, whether it's a deficient Secret Service in how they lackadaisically protect presidential candidates, to a lackadaisical intelligence community, to a lackadaisical group of generals that can't beat Afghan Taliban or Shia militias in Iraq or Shia militias in Yemen. The U.S. military is taking multiple body blows in multiple theaters over the last 4 years, and it is time to reverse that tide.
Well, look, hats off to the animal spirit of the Mossad. Last question on this topic, Erik. Um, you're a historian. In the annals of military history, does this go up there with one of the greatest achievements? I mean, with the code breakers of World War II, or other achievements?
I'd have to think back to some of the old stories of an enemy slipping poison into some enemy's banquet and poisoning all the generals on one night of partying or something. That's the only corollary I can think of to pulling this off, because literally having something that's attached to the hip of um, every one of the enemy's leadership, because by definition the org chart is going to have the pager so they can communicate with their chain of command, and to have it go off on their hip, you can see the after wounds where literally there's a massive hole blown in their hip or in their groin or up to their face. 800 guys blinded by this strike. It is an extraordinary success against their enemies, and it's going to make their enemies extremely leery of any kind of technology going forward.
Well, and here's, the Biden administration response immediately was, well, let's show restraint on both sides. And yet Hezbollah clearly is going to ramp up the confrontation with Israel. But it looks like Israel is ready for that confrontation. Am I right?
Well, they certainly they dropped quite a few bombs and struck a lot of those missiles that had been stored in people's houses, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, rockets systems, etc. There's still been some rockets that have made it through to Israel, but the supply chain that links Iran all the way to the Israeli border with Lebanon makes it possible for the Iranian Hezbollah to load up 150,000 plus devices to launch against Israel. I doubt very much that the Israelis are going to go in the ground, because they stand to really step into a bigger quagmire then, because that terrain is as or more difficult than Gaza, because it's mountainous, there's forest, there's very hard underground, it's all rock up there, and with a lot of tunnels. And I would argue that the Lebanese fighters are better than the Palestinian fighters are. But they have definitely not a decisive mortal blow against Lebanon, against Hezbollah as a fighting capability, but they have certainly put them on life support. And even very recent news of a strike on the Hezbollah main command bunker that they think they might have even killed Hassan Nasrallah, who was really the only one left.
Well, and it sends a massive signal to the world from Israel that says we are not stopping until the threat is neutralized. But I've been looking forward to this. Go ahead, Erik. Last word.
And again, the Biden administration has been holding them back from going hard against their enemies. But again, and the sad part, the combat in Gaza, the IDF stepped into the exact fight that Hamas wanted to have, and a lot of civilians died as a part of it. And that is a problem the Israelis are going to have to deal with going forward, because it burned a lot of them on trade and business and all the rest. They have to find a way to bring along the healthy parts of Palestinian society and give them an opportunity to better their lives, and not just force them into an open air prison camp again, because they will find a way to lash back again, and then the cycle of violence will continue.
Yeah, well said. It's got to be ended in the Gaza. The threat has got to be ended permanently. Very well said. I've been looking forward to this analysis of this unprecedented attack from the Mossad and the IDF. And you're only going to get that kind of analysis here on Off Leash with Erik Prince. That's it for this episode of Off Leash. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mark Serrano. Until next time.